Alright, well, in this video, we are going to take a look at histogram basics. I mean, the absolute basics of, what is the histogram, and what exactly does it help us to do, why you should care about it. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to start off with kind of a little pop quiz, and it's just really to help you determine whether or not you should keep watching this video or not. So see if you can answer the question here. I've got 3 photos up at the top. I've got A, B, and C. Now, see if you can take a moment to match each one of these photos at the top to its histogram below it. All right, now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you'll definitely want to follow along. But if you've got kind of an idea what I'm talking about, but you're still not sure, see if you can match them up to the histogram. On the histograms on the bottom, only 1 per photo, and each one of them is used throughout the whole thing. More importantly, though, see, as you're doing this, see if you can tell yourself why it matches that histogram. So take a moment here, pause the video, and go ahead and try to match them up. All right, so now I'm going to assume that you have paused the video here and you have your answers in mind. Now I'll tell you what the answers are. We've got A on the top left. That corresponds to histogram number 3 right over here. And then we have got B right here in the middle. And B corresponds to histogram number 1. And then we've got C. And C corresponds, you guessed it, to histogram number 2. So if you got all those right and you know exactly why, I suggest just to stop the video right now, because you probably know just about everything that I'm going to tell you here. If you don't, then let's move forward. All right, so why, more importantly, we know which histograms go with what, but now let's take a look at why this happens. What is the histogram and what can it help us do? First of all, a histogram is exactly what you see here. It's this slightly mountainous type range of, I guess, bars that you can say that go across from left to right, and they represent the tonal value of your image or your photo. Now, the thing is, the histogram is not so much telling us about the color, and we'll cover a little bit more intermediate and some advanced stuff in another video about the histogram, but it's not really talking to us about the color. We're more fixing the tonality, the tone of our photos. And when I say tone, I mean too dark, too light, the contrast. So that's what we're kind of talking about here when we're working with our histogram. Now, the histogram, we can tell a lot just by looking at this picture of our photo. In fact, I could tell you what generally the photo looked like without ever even being able to see the photo. And I shouldn't say I can do it, but anyone versed in histograms and what they mean could tell you generally what type of a photo you were looking at without ever even actually seeing that photo. Let's start over. Let's take the number 2 histogram, for example. I could tell you that this is a very dark photo. How do I know that? Because of where the information in the histogram is. See how it's all the way over here on the left? I know that it's dark. How do I know it's dark? Well, let's step out of this view for a second, and let's just go ahead and let's open up one of these photos inside of Photoshop here, and let's open up this middle one. And I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments. I'm going to choose Levels. Now, we have our histogram palette, but one thing the histogram palette doesn't show you is what all these areas mean. So that's why I'm going to go over to Levels, because Levels does show us exactly what these areas mean. So again, here's a histogram. The histogram you see here is exactly like the histogram that you see over here, except for one thing. See this gradient right below it? This is telling us what up here refers to. So what do I mean by that? Well, remember the dark photo we had? In fact, why don't I just use the dark photo instead of that example? So let's go find our dark photo here. There we go. So I'm going to go to Levels again, and instead of going through the menu, I'll just press Control-L. That's Command-L on the Mac. Now, I've got my histogram open. I got my levels adjustment open. And remember how I said I knew just by looking at this histogram that it was a dark photo? That's because what you see up here corresponds to what you see directly below it in the levels dialog box, in this gradient. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, every single point, if you were to picture 256 individual colors, a gradient from black to white, straight across the top here, okay? Every single one of these points I've clicked corresponds to that color that's directly below it. So if I were to move over here, if I move my mouse straight down, what this is telling me is that this is kind of a really light gray color. It's telling me that it's not found in my histogram, which means it's not found in my photo. There's a little bit of whites over here. See these guys over here? These are the specular highlights. As I go straight down from there, it's telling me that there are some whites here, but look at that. There's not much. There's barely any whites inside there. So it's telling me there's not a lot of those in my photo. There's none of these in the photo, but as I start getting darker, I start getting to these darker colors, it's telling me there's a lot of these colors inside this photo. These colors are dark, so it's telling me that that's a dark photo. So that's kind of the basics of what the histogram is, how it helps us out. Here's the thing. You've got access to a histogram before you ever even get into Photoshop. When you take pictures with your digital camera, and a lot of times it doesn't even have to be a pro SLR camera. My point and shoot, I've got a little Casio point and shoot camera, and that allows me to see the histogram. So when I take the photo, I can look at the histogram and I can see if it looks like what I want it to look like. Let me cancel out of levels here, and let's go back to our other image. And if you want to know how I'm getting full screen, I'm just pressing F, and then tab to hide all the palettes here. So that gets me into that full screen mode. Let's go back to looking at these photos and the histograms. So we said we knew this one over here, C, we knew that one was really dark. And then we said we knew that B was number 1 over here. And how do I know that B is number 1? Well, again, I could tell you, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the photo was of, but I would be able to tell you one thing about this photo from looking at this histogram. And I could tell you that it lacked contrast. How do I know? Contrast is, when I get contrast, that's the difference between the blacks and the whites in the photo, okay? When I see extreme blacks and I see extreme whites, extreme shadows, extreme highlights, I know that that's giving me a lot of contrast in the photo. That's exactly what contrast is. So when I look at this histogram, remember, let's do one more thing here. I'm going to turn on a layer. There we go. So see what I've done? I've put a gradient below all of these. So when I turn on this layer, remember our blacks are all the way over here? This histogram is telling me I don't have any black in this photo. I've got some really dark grays, but no black. Over here on the right, it's telling me that there's no whites in the photo. Some really light grays, but nothing that's all white. And when I look at that photo, I can see just that. I can see it lacks contrast. It lacks that punch that's really going to make me look twice at it. It looks kind of dull and gray right now. And you can see here, I've got plenty of grays in this photo, plenty of them. Now let's take a look at this photo over here. By the way, incidentally, if I see this histogram in my camera's screen after I take the shot, I'm actually pretty happy, because I know that what I want to do here, if I've got to do some work in Photoshop, I know that it's really, really simple. The fix here is very, very simple for what I can do inside Photoshop. So if I see that it's well represented from the left to the right, there's no spikes over here, and there's no spikes over here. Notice over here we've got some spikes. This one's not too bad because it's not all the way over here on the extreme left-hand side or on the right-hand side, and we're going to see how that's bad in a minute here. But I'm pretty happy with this one. I'm somewhat happy with this one as well. I might try to change my exposure to move that histogram toward the center a little bit, but that's still not bad either. Now let's take a look at one that could be a problem though, and that is A. See all that information in the dress over here? See how it's very white? Take a look at this histogram. See what happens on the right-hand side? It's telling me that I've got all these whites, and they're all white. 255, 255, 255 RGB. It's all white, and it's going right off of the edge here. Now, if I have all white or I have all black, what does that mean? It means there's no detail in those areas. And if there's no detail, that could be a problem. It could be okay in some circumstances, but in this image here, I think it's kind of a problem because we're losing a lot of detail inside the dress here. It's all white. So when I look at my histogram, I know if I were to see this in the camera, if I see that histogram, I'm going to know that I might need to take the shot using a different exposure. All right, because you see it's all going off of the right-hand side, and a lot of cameras have what's called a highlight clipping display, and that means that your screen on your camera is going to start blinking at you. We call it the blinkies. So if you've ever seen that where your screen on your camera blinks at you, that means that you've got a problem. That means that that's overexposed in those areas. It's going to be all white, and those areas won't have detail. So make sure before you walk away from that scene or that shot, make sure that you're okay with giving away all your detail in whatever areas were blinking. Now, if I saw this in the camera, I would probably change the exposure, retake the shot, so maybe it looked a little bit more like this, and as the histogram goes in the center here. So I don't have anything flying off of the right-hand side. I don't have anything flying off that left-hand side over here, as I do with this. Remember, those are going to be all white, so there's no detail. So that, folks, that's kind of just an introduction to what a histogram is, how you can start working with these histograms before you ever even get into Photoshop. Look through your camera manual. If you don't have it anymore, go online, find your camera manufacturer and go online and you can download one. But look through your camera manual, do a search for histogram, and find out how to turn on that histogram view. And that way, after you take the shot, you can look at your histogram, see how it looks, start studying it, because it's a really good learning tool. Now, what we're going to do in the next video that I'll do here, so I'll put it, it'll be on the NAT member website, as this one is, and what we'll do is we'll go into how I would fix each one of these photos, because you can fix the histograms, you can change them, you can make them kind of fit into the mold that you wanted if you weren't able to do it inside the camera. So there's ways that you can work with these inside of Photoshop. So before the next video, go out there, look at some of your photos. If you're taking any photos between now and then, try to take a look at the histogram or load them up into Photoshop, and maybe do a little test yourself. See if you can kind of guess what that histogram is going to look like before you actually look at the histogram itself.